The Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally is the toughest event of its kind in the world. For three-time winner Richard Schilling's success in the roof last came in 1992. Being back at the front of the field was an enormous boost for Schilling and navigator Ashley Thorne.
Yeah, no, it's taken a long time to be starting in the front again, but Ashley and myself are delighted that at last we've had a chance to show what the car can do and the team can do. Nice position to start the roofing on the second day.
On the right, Paddy Driver, a South African motorsport legend who won motorcycle and saloon car track races and off-road events over 4 decades. Reduced nowadays to the role of enthusiastic spectator, Driver was on hand to see Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne lead the field away in the Mototech Raceco with its V8 power and semi-automatic gearbox. Next away were Rob Walk and former driver Greg Wiebel in a far more conventional Raceco. The off-road fraternity just love their early morning starts, and even in November there's a nip in the air in Lesotho. The good news as far as competitors were concerned was that Lesotho's notoriously fickle weather looked like staying clear. The Roof of Africa in the wet is sheer torture, and everyone was praying for dry conditions. The Nissan Sani of Neil Woolridge and Paul Vermaak was the first of the production vehicles off the line. The Nissan was ahead of a pensive-looking RB Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser. Up at the front of the field, there was a rapid change in race order, with Rob Walk and Greg Wiebel quickly moving ahead of the Schilling-Thorne combination in the Mototech Raceco. The quick change at the front of the field with Walk and Wiebel going into the lead was something of a surprise, but set up the prospect of a good battle between the Super Pave car and the Mototech entry. Behind them, Nardis Alberts and Peter Mattia in the Toyota-powered Rapso Raceco had started off on a promising note. The pair were going well and their prospects looked bright. Alberts and Mattia ran into good form late in the season and were looking for another strong performance. Running fourth on the road was the Shell Raceco of Stanley Illman and Frans Stangl. The approach Illman and Stangl take to their off-road racing is to settle into a rhythm and gradually wear down the opposition. It paid off with a win in the first event of the season, with their championship challenge disrupted slightly by their London to Mexico adventure. There was also a promising start for Craig Draper, who was partnered in the Castrol Racing Raceco by Mike Pretorius, who at one stage navigated for Draper's father Linton. Toyota Desert Race winner Richard Carolyn was the first of the single-seaters in the lubrication equipment Raceco, with brother Bix again down on the entry list as co-driver of the car. Affectionately known as Obut, elder brother Richard is steadiness personified and dovetails well with his more aggressive brother. There had also been an early change at the front of the production vehicle category. The Bankfin Toyota Land Cruiser of RB Reinecker and Robin Houghton had moved ahead of the Nissan Sani, with the Toyota's motors sounding as crisp as ever. It was turning into a good day for Toyota, with the Castrol Hilux in the hands of Springboks, Cassie Kutsia and Richard Leek. Second on the road in the production vehicle category behind the Land Cruiser, the experienced Leek and Kutsia, winners of the roof in 1993, had also moved ahead of the Woolridge Vermaak Nissan Sani, which appeared to have run into problems. The Natal crew of Derek Pinoy and Hilton Laurie were going along steadily in an aging Raceco. Pinoy is highly experienced and a previous winner in national off-road racing, who knows just what the Roof of Africa is all about. While some crews were content to try and preserve machinery for the final day, the Sulwald brothers, Herman and Karl Heinz, were on a charge in the Sulwald Transport Raceco. It had been an unhappy season for the 1994 Special Vehicle Champions, and they were determined to make up for it on the roof. At the front of the Class B field, Herbie Smith was having another good outing in the superbly turned out Mighty Mag. Looking like a miniature version of the bigger and more powerful Racecos, the Mighty Mag and Smith have turned in some impressive performances this season. Behind Smith, the Nissan Sani, driven by Neil Woolridge and Paul Vermaak, was rapidly losing time to the two Toyota teams, running 1 and 2 on the road in the production vehicle category. One of the beauties of the Roof of Africa, or you could call it a pitfall depending on your point of view, is the deceptive nature of the terrain. A road or track which at first glance looks to be straightforward enough is often loaded with hidden dangers. Race cam footage from the Nissan Sani provided for a perfect example of what the roof is all about. With the Chepek father and son combination out of the running, all Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton had to do to make sure of the Special Vehicle Championship was to get the Queen Motorspares racecoat to the finish. Like Stan Illman and Frank Stungel, the Eastern Cape crew are not given to taking extravagant chances and were quite content to let the opposition make the mistakes. Class B frontrunners Wade Perrins and Derek Frankenberg and the normally reliable Sandmaster had fallen behind class leader Herbie Smith, but at this stage of the race must have been satisfied with their progress. Class E quickly developed into a battle of the families with Andrew and Chris Birkin up against the consistent husband and wife pairing of Niels and Albie Lemmer. Just to make it a little more interesting, with the Birkins nosing ahead in the early stages, both crews were in Toyota Hiluxes. Up against the big guns with factory backing in Class D, the aging Nissan Safari of Mafeking pair Paul Yonker and Michael Allen never had a realistic chance of class honours, but there was a spirited performance from the pair in the early stages of Racing Section 2. At the front of the quad racer field, Vickers van Deventer and Derek Johnson were racing together. Since the quad racers were granted national championship status a season ago, Van Deventer has been the dominant force in the championship, and it was a stout effort on Johnson's part to stick closely to the Barbaspan-based rider. There were no prizes for guessing who had taken an early grip on the motorcycle section of the 1995 Roof of Africa Rally. Mounted on the Pro Action Castrol KTM, the diminutive Alfie Cox had simply picked up where he left off nearly 9 months previously when he went to campaign in Europe. In search of his 7th roof victory, Cox had already passed the Videosport SVM Range Rover of Arthur Abram and Stratford Voigt, which was not sounding all that healthy. Within moments of Cox steaming past the Range Rover, Abraham and Voigt decided that it was time for some running repairs, with the event suddenly starting to bare its teeth. Graham McLaughlin was having to push hard on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda to keep tabs on Cox, and when he went past the Videosport SVM entry, navigator come engineer Stratford Voigt was delving deep into the Range Rover's innards. Lesotho entry Fofolo Shai and Moratole Ramasika in a Toyota Hilux were running third in Class E among the production vehicle entries. Behind them, two-wheeler Grey Dick was having a good run on the Schimmels Yamaha in the 500 class. Dick was running third on the road to Alfie Cox and Graham McLaughlin, but behind him, Errol Dalton on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda and Daryl Curtis on the Pro Action AGA Panasonic KTM were closing in for the kill. Dalton and Curtis even had time to exchange a few pleasantries as they blasted through the Lesotho countryside. As a general rule, the motorcycle brigade start an hour after the cars and buckies on off-road events. It does not take the quicker bikers long to catch up with the car backmarkers, and there are times when overtaking can be a bit of a problem. For the most part, the bikers are an inventive lot, and with the more maneuverable machines, sooner or later find a way around the cars. Over the years, the Roof has drawn a string of top-notch overseas competitors. The event has 5 times been won by riders from overseas, with German Dirk von Zitzewitz on a KTM lurking on the fringes of the top 5 early on in this year's race. Kevin Fisher on the Pro Honda machine was having a good run, and at this stage there was no one among the front runners who you did not expect to be there. Championship leader Alex Vowles on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki was running at the front of the 200 category, with Rod McPherson third on the road among the quad racers, but a long way adrift of Vickers van Deventer and Derek Johnson. River crossings like this one were meat and drink to the bikers, but elicited a far more cautious approach from the car and bucky brigade. With an outside chance of winning the production vehicle championship, Class F frontrunners Ralph Henderson and nephew Ray in the roller-bearing Printer Services Ford were not taking any chances. The Hendersons were being overtaken by biker after biker, but were in firm control of Class F. Behind them, Arthur Abram and Stratford Voigt were mobile again in the Videosport SVM Range Rover, but had lost plenty of time. There was always plenty of activity at service and refuel points, and a nice touch with the sidelined Franz Čepek Senior and Junior helping to service for championship rivals Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton. The Eastern Cape pair were still running strongly, but for others, problems were a little more serious. At the front of the field, there had been some dramatic changes. Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne in the Mototech Raceco were firmly in control, with early leaders Robbie Walker and Greg Weeble and a string of crews running into a variety of problems. Schilling and Thorne were now being chased by Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek, who were second on the road in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. There had also been a dramatic change of terrain for the four-wheel runners. They had moved from flat and open sections into tight mountain passes, which were a handful for big vehicles like the Bankford Toyota Land Cruiser of R.P. Reneker and Robin Houghton, which had now slotted into third place behind the Schilling, Thorne and Coetzee Leek combinations. Fourth on the road were Stanley Illman and Franz Stangl in the Shell Raceco, who were maintaining the steady pace that has become a trademark for the pair. At the front of the motorcycle field, the inimitable Alfie Cox was all on his own and going like the clappers on the Pro Action Castrol KTM. After missing most of the South African season through campaigning overseas, it was like old times for the Italian, who was once again clamping a vice-like grip on the roof of Africa. There was also a change of scenery for the bikers. They were now also into the mountains, with Errol Dalton on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda and Darrell Curtis on the Pro Action AJ Panasonic KTM still riding together. While Cox was overseas, Dalton and Curtis did most of the winning in this year's championship. Behind them, Jason Moriarty sharing riding duties with Alan Julien on the Pro Honda and Gray Dick on the Schimwells Yamaha were finding it tough going and had been caught by German rider Dirk von Zitzewitz on the KTM Deutschland entry. Early frontrunner Graham McLaughlin on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda had dropped back slightly and was now 7th on the road. The Lesotho sunroof of Africa always comes up with a few surprises, and carving their way through the field were Natal crew Mark Laurie and Warren Morton in a Raceco. Right behind the pair were Laurie's brother Hilton, who was navigating for Derek Pinoy in yet another Raceco. Both the Natal entries were running strongly with no hint of a problem. Behind the two Natal crews, there was also no hint of a problem for Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton in the Queen Motorspares car, who were soldiering steadily onwards. The Eastern Cape pair now had a firm grip on this year's Special Vehicle Championship. Alex Vowles also had a firm grip on the 200 class championship on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki, but was coming under pressure from Clayton Enslin on the PD Motorcycles Kawasaki. Enslin was right on the tail of Gray Dick on the Schimwells Yamaha, with Graham McLaughlin dropping another couple of places on the Lesotho Office Equipment Honda. Not that McLaughlin looked too unhappy about the situation. There were also no prizes for guessing who was at the front of the quad racer brigade. Vickers van Deventer on the Pro Group Security Yamaha Banshee had shaken off the attentions of Derek Johnson, who had run into problems. Van Deventer had also moved ahead of the Nissan Sani of Neil Woolridge and Paul Famar. The Sani had lost a great deal of time to production vehicle frontrunners Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the Castrol Toyota Hilux and R.P. Reneker and Robin Houghton in the Bankford Toyota Land Cruiser. Not far behind Woolridge and Vermaak was Rod McPherson on the Team Johannesburg Yamaha, who had made up a great deal of ground and was running second to Van Deventer in the quad category. While McPherson was eating a little dust from the Nissan Sani, there was a more comfortable ride home for someone who had failed to see out the distance. There were no such luxuries, though, for Derek Johnson, who was pushing hard to make up for lost time on the Team Yamaha Banshee. First across the line at the finish at the end of day 2 of the roof were Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne in the Motortech Raceco. They'd opened up a gap of around 25 minutes over Stan Illman and Franz Stangl in the special vehicle category. Derek Pinoy and Hilton Laurie, Greg Harvey and Lionel Acton and Richard Carolyn completed the top 5. First home in the production vehicle category were 1993 winners Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. They were around 14 minutes ahead of R.P. Reiniger and Robin Houghton, with the Nissan Sani almost an hour behind in third place. At the end of day 2, overall motorcycle category leader Alfie Cox on the Pro Action Castrol KTM had stretched his lead over Daryl Curtis to a whopping 28 minutes. Curtis had broken away from Errol Dalton, with Dirk von Zitzewitz and Alex Vowles completing the top 5.
It's getting rougher each year, and the very long day today, physically, because of the jarring in the arms, because the washaways and the rain has done a lot of damage in the mountains. But it was a good ride, and marking was good. I'm very happy.
As expected, Vickers van Deventer led home the quad races, but he was less than 2 minutes in front. Behind van Deventer, a good battle was developing for second place. Derek Johnson had again moved ahead of Rod McPherson in a battle that was seesawing. Good ride saw Kevin Pereira and Evan Hutchinson into 4th and 5th.